Hey, this is Dag, and you're listening to Beyond Trek Podcast.
Red alert.
Welcome to another edition of Beyond Trek Podcast. I'm your host, Big J, here along with Renzo. So we're going to have a duo review today, not only just two of us, but you'll have to catch the two separate episodes that we're reviewing. We had an overlap with Star Trek Discovery and first episode in the new season of Star Trek Picard. So we're pulling double duty tonight. I'm sure we'll be able to get through this. So let's start right in and dive in with, let's see, this was episode 11 in season 4 of Discovery called Rosetta.
Spoiler alert, spoiler alert, spoiler alert.
Let's hit that ground running.
Right. So first, the name, fascinating choice of a name. It's named after the Rosetta Stone, which was how we ended up deciphering hieroglyphics, ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics. And it had two other languages on it, which are notable because that's the only way that it worked. If we'd only had one, deciphering the hieroglyphics might have still been pretty rough. So it had both ancient Greek and a language called Demotic, both of which we had a pretty decent understanding of.
What was the second one?
Demotic, Demotic.
Never heard of that one.
Yes, that was the tablet itself is damaged, right? The first portion has hieroglyphics, the middle portion has Demotic, and the bottom portion has ancient Egyptian. Okay. Or sorry, ancient Greek. The Greek portion is also damaged. The hieroglyphics portion is damaged, but the Demotic one is the one that's most complete. So it was pretty necessary to get all three on the same thing and to figure out that they said the same thing, because we could figure out that, oh, look, the Demotic one says this. Oh, the Greek one says this. Well, shit, the third one, the one we can't read, must say the same thing too. And so that was the clutch bit of deciphering it. It happened in like the early 1800s, so like 1820s or so. But yeah, it was a very significant bit for how we decide, or how we managed to decipher that language. So
and it was a great title that they used for this, because they need to find a frame of reference to even have a chance to communicate with species 10C. In the previous episode, we had determined that, well, the universal translator is not guaranteed to be able to work with species 10C. They could have a completely different means of communicating. So if they don't have that frame of reference, they're not going to be able to do it. They're just going to go in cold.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a significant thing of any first contact, right? In Star Trek, they often manage to rely just on like the universal translator, but we've seen even with it, we get mistakes made, right? So like Porthos peeing on a plant in Enterprise caused a huge diplomatic incident. Where Archer had to like dress up in a fancy costume and do a particular dance. We see the same thing happen in Voyager, and I would argue that the entire Dominion War is a result of a bad first contact. So, I mean,
the first contact with the Dominion didn't necessarily go as smoothly as you'd want.
No, not at all. But yeah, so first contact, very important. Second contact, as we learned from Lower Decks, also very important, but they don't have that hurdle. A frame of reference and language communications generally established by that point. So that's what this episode's about. It's about getting the underpinnings of a first contact ready before you go do the first contact, because it's such an important one. If you fuck up on like talking to your neighborhood, your friendly local alien race you've never encountered before, who has a dozen planets or whatever. Okay, bad first contact. Maybe we have some chilled relations for a while, but eventually we'll figure it out. 10C has 29 hours until they probably destroy Earth and Navarre. So no room for mistakes here.
No, there isn't.
Yeah. Okay. So the episode starts with Burnham doing like a log entry or whatever, just talking about how far away they are from the 10C's base, the hyperfield as they presume it. And we get this really cool shot showing a bombarded rock of a planet and a couple Dyson rings around the star with some additional big ass platforms around it. Hell of a shot.
I want to know more about that. The Dyson ring and Dyson technology. And it's been a while since we've not only seen that, but it's been a while since we had a captain's log. So why would they've gone this long without doing it? Why all of a sudden have one? It's been so inconsistent. Sure, I miss it, but throughout the entire run of Discovery, it's like something that's been kind of an afterthought with every other iteration of Star Trek having the captain's log. This is probably the third or fourth in the entire series.
We definitely have not had a regular cadence of them, which honestly doesn't bother me. It's not a huge deal because we've had lots of Star Trek episodes that don't have them all throughout the franchise. It's just not the wheelhouse that they're using for Disco. So That's cool. I mean, getting one every now and then is nice. We've seen a couple in this season with like Saru doing a log, or I think Tilly did a log once earlier in the season too. But yeah, they're just not a focus. So whatever. But yeah, so Burnham's dictating her log. She specifically wants to point out that they're going to this world because they believe it was 10C's homeworld, because it's so close to the hyperfield. It's got the right age, and some of the readings around it were suspicious. And the Dyson rings. I want to point out something that I think is very interesting here.
Okay.
These Dyson rings are smaller than a Dyson sphere, obviously, but they're not something you're going to be making habitable. They're very close to the star. The point is to collect energy. Cool. Fantastic. It's like giant solar arrays very close to a star, collect everything you got, reuse that power. Right. That's a lot of power.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it's a ton of power. It's more than hundreds or thousands of warp cores, considering how close it was, right? So, hey, Tarka wants to go jump to another universe. Use that.
Yeah, if that's not what's controlling the DMA, good Lord, I want to see what is, because that seemed like that would be the perfect thing, unless it was, I don't know, shut down or something like that.
I mean, even if it's non-functional, that should still be something Starfleet studies while they're out here, for sure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, if they've got the time.
Right, if they had the time. Okay, so we get this cool scene where Burnham, Saru, Detmer, and Culber are heading out to their shuttle, and Adira Tal swings by and gives a very awkward fly good to Detmer. It's not the first time somebody's told Detmer fly good. Pike said the same thing to her in second season.
Yes.
So cool little throwback, but Adira was not there during that. So they clearly didn't know that they were referencing something that had been said before, which is cool, right? Like it's a clear sign that they're trying to like make a friend, and that becomes a relevant part of the episode later.
Now, with that scene of Culber, Detmer, Saru, and Captain Burnham walking down the hallway, I got the right stuff vibes from that. I haven't seen the whole thing, but that's anytime you have a walking on a hallway scene like that movie tends to come up. So beautifully shot scene.
Yeah, I have no complaints about it. It looked really good. It actually reminded me of The West Wing, where you have hundreds of scenes with a group of characters walking down a hallway and just talking very quickly about something. But here it was silent. It was just like this very epic, like, we need to like get this done kind of montage.
I think they did that in Armageddon too.
You're right. They certainly did. There was that scene with Will Smith's pilot and the hacker guy, like just walking towards the alien shuttle thing.
That was Independence Day. Armageddon was the Bruce Willis one, and Ben Affleck, they had to drill into that.
You're right.
Big ass. Yeah.
You are right, sir. All right. So next scene is with Tarka and Booker deciding what their plan is. And they come up with this cockamamie scheme where they're going to install a software patch inside of Discovery to null out Zora's sensors on like a small section of the hull. And they're just going to like piggyback ride all the way there. It's a little convoluted. It's real convoluted, but whatever. I mean, we've seen many Olympic kind of ideas in Star Trek before, where a ship just kind of like tags along. It happens to the Enterprise D. It happens to the Defiant does it at one point. So it's cool. It does worry me that Booker is willing to like board Discovery, do this thing where there's no way he could know he's not going to have to kill someone on the crew to do it. Right. He can't know that he's not going to have to do it. It's a risky move, and he's willing to try it anyways.
Well, yeah, I mean, they are pretty desperate at this point. And then the fact that they were able to attach themselves to Discovery That gave me Empire Strikes Back vibes.
Yeah, actually, the Millennium Falcon on the Imperial Star Destroyer. You're right. That's a good call. It is a lot like that, and I'm not sure I like it. It's like I said, it's a cockamamie scheme. We've seen it before. Whatever. Cool.
Yeah, it's one of those things where we need to get the characters from here to here, and we need to have a reason. All right, here's the reason. Might not make sense, but we got to get them from point A to point B.
Yeah, there was one good thing about this scene where where Tarka and Book were very honest about the fact that they don't know that they won't run into Michael during this whole thing, and they don't know how Booker will respond if they run into Michael. So yeah, that's realistic as all hell.
Yes, it is.
It also shows a little bit of softening in Booker's tone towards Tarka as a result of the explanations he got from last episode, all those exposition scenes, which is really good. It's realistic. It's dumb, right? Like the guy is still a monster, but I get it.
Yeah. Good point.
Okay, so that's that scene. The next scene is the shuttle bay scene where we've got Rillick and the other diplomats and xenoanthropologists and all of them on the part of the reception, I guess, almost like they want to talk to Burnham before she leaves, which is like a real waste of time in my book. I get it. I get that they want to be there, but it felt like a bit of a waste of time.
They're complaining about wasting time while they're wasting time, complaining about wasting time.
Exactly.
I mean, it's like this circular wormhole here and I get the concern that some of them had, especially General Ndoye. Yeah.
I liked Ndoye. Her character is growing on me like crazy. They're fleshing her out well. The actress is kicking ass with it, really conveying that frustrated, almost desperation really well.
Well, and especially in a situation like this where you feel like making a pit stop here to kind of go exploring, you don't have time for that, or at least that's the feeling is we don't have time for that. We need to go directly to 10C, which I can understand that, but like we said at the beginning of our talking about this episode, if you have no frame of reference to be able to communicate, then it doesn't do anything
dangerous. Good. No, I think that Burnham is making the right decision by doing this, but justifying it is hard.
I've got an example for you. I'm not sure how much of this was true. I just remembered it. So President Nixon goes to Australia. And Nixon was always known for the peace sign thing, waving it around. But I heard in Australia, apparently that's our way of giving the middle finger.
Yeah, I mean,
the two-finger thing.
Definitely.
And JFK, Ich bin ein Berliner, that I am a jelly-filled donut.
That one has some nuance to it. That story has a little bit of nuance. Right. So almost everywhere in Germany, a Berliner is a jelly-filled donut or a cream-filled donut. Cool. But in Berlin, which is where he was giving the speech, a Berliner is a person from Berlin, right? Yeah. So while it played well to the crowd, it did not play well to the TV audience, right? So, but then again, he was also very clearly shown to be making an effort by even doing a sentence in German to a bunch of people who were looking to him to provide security, especially right after the Berlin airlift. So yeah, I get it, but that's a good comparison. I like that. But yeah, so we get this great scene with Ndoye expressing her concern, Tarina being supportive, and Dr. Hirai make the trip count, don't screw it up, right? And really gives him these dagger eyes of the fuck did you just say? Really now? And the Rillick actress, as ever, I love.
Yeah, I like that look. Well, the guy was kind of being I don't know how to talk to people, but I'm going to try anyway. That's how I see that guy.
No, and Sheila Horsdal, which I hope that's how you pronounce her name, the actress for Rillick, just absolutely looks like she's ready to strangle him with just her eyes, because she's a diplomat and she's looking like very presidential, and then just this look. I loved it. Cool. So Burnham responds that why she's bringing certain members of the group. She's taking Saru because Saru's got a ton of language experience and his sensory skills are better than your average human, and they don't know if their technology would work. So take what you got. And the rest of the group is necessary, so it makes sense. Her choice of group, going herself as a xeno scientist makes sense as well. Xenoanthropologist herself, it all makes sense. So they promise to do their best and they head out in the shuttle.
Very much a throwback to the original series. You got the captain, the first officer, the chief medical officer, and just, whoever else. Hadn't seen that in a while. And
I was worried that they were going to redshirt Detmer because of that.
Oh, yeah. I wasn't thinking about that, but yeah, I probably would have been like, and especially because Owusu-kun wasn't in the episode. So whenever they're shifting that budget to who we need someone to get a little more screen time, but we have to have one of the other B characters gone, that's when I always get suspicious. Like, all right, someone's biting the dust in this episode. But yeah, you're right.
Cool. So next scene is the shuttle, which I love the new look of these shuttles. Just putting that out there again. Goes through, lands on the planet. They lose communications. It's a bumpy trip. Cool. At least the laws of physics still work. Was a good line from Dr. Culber. Really thought that was a clever line.
That was pretty fortunate. Yeah.
I mean, Star Trek is replete with beings that manage to just go, oh, you thought physics worked this way? That's cute. Let's change it up. And we'll talk about that during our Picard review, I'm sure.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
So yeah, it was a cool scene. They land, they scan some ruins. I really liked how even as they're landing and descending through the atmosphere, like they're all like looking at different things and then sharing that information and their findings with each other. Right. So Burnham is looking at some ruins. Saru is looking at like some determinations as to like the meteorite impacts, all that really cool. And just to state it here, what they determined was that this was a former gas giant that had been hammered by meteorite impacts, which stripped it of its atmosphere.
Yep.
That's not impossible based on our current understanding of things. But man, would it be a shit ton of asteroids hitting at it? Right. Even if it was a small gas giant, right? Something like a cold giant like Neptune or Uranus. Like those two are much smaller than the big guys like Jupiter or Saturn or some of the hypergiants we've seen in other solar systems, but it's not impossible. It's not impossible, just a lot.
Right. And I kind of had a hard time buying that because like you said, it's not impossible, but very highly improbable. Like you said, where would these rocks come from? How would they get bombarded that much? And I would have to imagine that it had to be pretty steady bombardment, right? You can't have a few every 1,000 or so years. Otherwise it's.
Yeah. The one that caught me more by surprise is, so they were clearly evolved or technologically developed enough to make the Dyson rings, but they couldn't shoot down some rocks.
Well, you
see my point?
Yeah.
Now there's probably more to this story, right? Like if some alien enemy of theirs created a micro wormhole and just started throwing rocks at them, that's a deadly weapon. We've seen that in Babylon 5, the Centauri bombing Narn with the mass drivers with rocks.
Yes.
Definitely a weapon. But that's not impossible. They could do it that way. But in the absence of other explanation, I remain curious to how they let that happen to themselves. Okay, so they land, the shuttle decloaks, which is nice. I like the implementation of cloaking device throughout Starfleet here. Makes sense. Here's where we have the interesting bits that they show no life signs with their tricorders, even their own. So something is certainly disrupting their technology. Good thing they brought Saru. They bring out their phasers. Everybody's set to stun. And as soon as they start walking, we see this scene with Saru getting like disoriented. He sees He sees like a glimpse of something from the past. It looks almost like a giant sea snake or something with almost like wings is what it looked like to me, kind of like writhing in pain in the sky.
It was hard to see because it was just quick flashes of that.
Obviously by choice, right? Like they wanted us to be left still wondering. So I'm sold. That works for me. They don't tell us why he starts seeing this at this point, and we're left wondering. The neat thing then is after his little episode ends, Culber like steadies him, like checks in on him, and they realize that they're leaning up against a very large bone, like a giant whale bone kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, and then wasn't that? Yeah, that was supposedly a very, very large thing. So I was trying to make some guesses here as to what kind of species 10C is if a bone is that size. And I don't know. I'm not really coming up with, because I'm trying not to relate it to any species in our galaxy.
Well, we don't know of any besides our own.
Right. So 10C, they may turn out to be just large, just very big people.
I mean, to be fair, right? Science fiction has long had species that live inside of gas giants, right? I'm down with this idea. I have no issues with it. Their size makes sense, right? If they live in an atmosphere where there is less gravity because they're further away from the planet's core, cool. Their density is going to be different. There's a lot of science involved, but it's not insurmountable. It works for me. What I do think is really neat is the colors that they chose for these scenes, right? You've got this very brown, not quite red like Mars, but this brownness, and then these blue puddles, or not puddles, they're like blue sandy areas everywhere, which do end up becoming relevant. But yeah, it was a really striking visual. I liked it. They're definitely putting that wall that they use for shooting these scenes to good use as a result.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. They are using the wall that they that first started with the Mandalorian, aren't they?
Yeah, I can't remember the name of it. Yeah. It's like a dream wall or something, but it's essentially a giant wraparound screen that they can then they perform in front of, and then they use it to fill in digital effects afterwards, which is sick, honestly.
Yeah.
It's like rear projection, but taken to a new level.
Yep.
It's like matte paintings, but
large.
Moving. Yeah.
Right.
Big. But yeah, so that's all cool. Okay. So cutting back to Discover, or technically onto Booker's ship, they beam onto Discovery after prepping. There was this, I thought, pretty cute scene where they're getting onto the transporter and Booker like stoops and Tarka like goes, "Why are you doing that?" And Booker clearly knows what he's fucking doing, and Tarka would have been an idiot if he just remained standing and would have been sliced in half by the transporter. Like that a lot. It also tells us something about the Quajon ship's transporter safeties. It would have beamed them into something that a person would not fit. I don't think that would happen with Starfleet transporters. We've never seen it happen. So
you're right. Yeah. And it's not often that and that's another very inconsistent thing. You have instances where they adjust their posture or standing. Star Trek 2009, when Spock was about to beam down to Vulcan, he crouched down. Why? I don't know. He was going to be beaming outside, not like he thought he was going to end up under a tree. But anyway, but then later in the movie, he's sitting in that jellyfish, gets beamed to the Enterprise, and now he's standing. So I think the transporters in Star Trek operate at the technology of plot.
Yeah. But it is an interesting little bit there that Tarka has none of those street smarts, which we expect, and Booker does, and is like essentially snarkily getting him to do what he's supposed to. But yeah, so they beam over to Discovery, and they're in the Jeffries tubes, and they start traveling after a little bit more banter back and forth. Okay, back to the surface on the planet. Burnham and group are like kind of starting to worry. They start scanning the bones. This confirms what I was saying a few minutes ago, where the bones themselves are low density. They were very flexible, similar to cartilage. They were adapted to floating in gas layers. Again, makes perfect sense for a gas giant. So good. They thought this through. They're not like heavy underwater bones, like whale bones. They
Or like avian bones?
Probably similar, not hollow, I would think.
Okay.
Because bird bones are still kind of brittle.
Sure.
But these would have to be somewhat flexible because pressure, as you go up and down the layers of a gas giant, the pressures get very different. So they have to be able to take different pressures, whereas a bird just has one atmosphere.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, so they start noticing the blue dust in the wind, and they notice the blue dust on the ground, and it's some complex hydrocarbon that they've never seen in the Federation database. It's very neat. It makes this whole area look like it was a mass grave, which is going to become very somber and sad once we understand why.
Basically beamed down to a graveyard.
Well, it's a dead planet, right?
Yeah.
Everything's a graveyard at that point.
Yep. That's a good point. Wouldn't they be able to scan the bones and somehow extrapolate what it would look like or what it is? Or is there just so much no frame of reference that they can't do that?
Hard to say, right?
Right.
So remember with the Voth and Voyager, how they did that whole okay, now show me what they'd look like after 60 million years of evolution. And it suddenly looked a lot like the fucking Voth.
Yes.
Right. But we know how life on Earth generally evolves. But what we don't know is where the Voth were and what other pressures would have led to their evolution working in a certain way. So it's kind of an unbelievable scene that it would work at all and that it was close to accurate. But Starfleet's technology seems to be able to generally reconstruct what something looks like from remains.
Yeah.
Maybe by the 31st century, they're better at it. They just can't do it without any frame of reference. And that's what this would be.
Yep.
Okay. It's generally like a cool scene where they start putting together some parts. They start looking around and they notice that there's one building in the distance that is in much better shape. It was reinforced. So they start traveling towards that reinforced building, thinking that it might be, a government building or something more important than all the rest. It's
got to be important to be that reinforced.
Yep. All right. So back to Discovery, and we've got Rillick talking to Dr. Harai. He's playing like a 3D crossword puzzle, which is really cool.
Yeah.
And he's trying to think of a word for an act which a person is bound to complete. Rillick first goes, a mission. But that's not right because it needs to be 10 letters and that's not 10 letters. And Harai is kind of like dismissive of like, no, I can figure this out myself. Like it's clear that he didn't really welcome the input, but yeah. They have a cool little back and forth where Rillick admonishes him for being too negative and how it affected Ndoye, and you could be a bit more supportive. Makes sense.
He could. He kind of reminds me of, you probably know this. I'm sure you've seen this in the IT profession. There are a lot of us that are we're in our office, are encapsulated, surrounded by all the monitors and old computers and dust and cables and everything, and not really interactive with people. Certainly come across my fair share that they're very introverted. To me, this guy seems very introverted, like he actually spends most of his time to himself in a lab, doesn't really interact a whole lot. So he can't read the room, really can't read the room.
Like it's not a good look for him.
Yeah, it's not. And I'm glad in the 31st century that we still have crossword puzzles.
Well, it was recommended to him by Kovich, which I think is an interesting point. Kovich recommended to him, and it's an ancient Earth puzzle, right?
Yeah.
Which I think leads to me having a theory now that Kovich is an Elorian because he seems to know a lot about old stuff. Like he knew about what was the show, the one from last episode, the 4-hour
Gilligan's Island.
Gilligan's Island. He knew about Gilligan's Island, and he knows about ancient crosswords. It's kind of interesting. I think he might be really, really fucking old.
Yeah. He looks it.
Yeah. I mean, Cronenberg is a great actor, so he definitely has this real stoicness to it. But yeah, it was cool. But yeah, so Harai agrees that he's going to do better. right? And then as she's like about to leave, she's like, oh, let me spin around the keyboard, types in obligation, and like just storms off, right? Like Rillick is smart. Rillick knows words. Rillick would be great at Wordle. I have no doubts of that.
What the hell is this Wordle thing? I keep seeing people posting stuff on Facebook, whatever. What the hell?
We don't have the time. This will take forever, man.
All right.
But yeah, just think of it. It's just a new word game, basically.
I'll research it on the offline. Yeah.
All right. And then, so back to the Jeffries tube, Booker overhears a conversation between Tarina and Ndoye where Ndoye expresses some of her concerns. Makes sense. And here's where Booker gets this bright idea that he's going to somehow enlist Ndoye's help in their plot. And here is where they decide to like split up. Booker is going to go try and talk to Ndoye or trick Ndoye into going someplace so that they can talk. And Tarka is going to go to patch the ship and do their actual mission.
Well, it's a good idea because it was pointed out that Ndoye agreed with the type of
did vote with them. It's true.
Right. Voted with them. So they might as well try to get a hold of the possibly only ally they would have present on that ship. Well, right. And Ndoye would be the only one.
It is still a huge risk, though.
Yep.
I'm not sure that it's a good idea, but it is a big risk.
Well, I mean, at this point, there's not a lot. An idea is an idea, whether it's good or bad, still an idea. That's kind of at the point where they're at right now.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you there. It's certainly better than doing nothing.
Yes.
But yeah, so they split up. Generally a bad idea to split up a team on like a small party on something like this, but it's only they can do this because they just don't have the time. They'll get caught by Zora eventually, even if they've got little sensor evading patches or bracelets or whatever the hell they used, right?
Better to catch one than both of them walking around at the same time together.
Mm-hmm. Okay, back to the surface. Saru is still having a bit of a panic attack. He's clutching his phaser, like seriously. Culber and Burnham remark that his fear responses should be gone after the Lahari, but his levels are dangerously elevated for like stress hormones. Okay. So Culber goes over and tries to like stabilize him. And while they're talking, Culber has the same fear event happen, right? He sees some of these visions. He freaks out, definitely similar to them. And at that point, they start talking about how their suits should filter out any external element, right? Nothing should be getting through to them. To try and like comfort them. But yeah, it doesn't look good for our heroes here. If two of them are having crazy psychic events, it almost seems like. Back to the ship.
Yeah.
Booker and Tarka out of the Jeffries tube below engineering. Tarka goes, detects 3 life signs, so he's going to create a diversion to get himself in engineering. Booker sends like a message under Tarina's name to Ndoye and goes to meet up with Ndoye as part of his plan. Tarka remarks at this point, right before they split up, as I mentioned before, that they don't have a lot of time, so be convincing, and this could give us away if she doesn't agree to help us. So,
and then they're screwed at that point.
That's the risky thing, right? Like if they've got this plan and it seems to be going well, finish your patching, then maybe try for the bonus objective, but...
Sure. Yeah. Don't do the side quest first.
I can't say I follow that rule, but
yeah, we're right. I know exactly what you're talking about. They're hard to avoid.
So they going back to the ship, or going back to the planet rather. Detmer is noting that there's no cultural artifacts, no technology in the room. She and Burnham decide that Saru should not be escorted back to the shuttle. Keep it here. Let's give it a bit more time. Let's try and see what we can figure out. And then Burnham randomly, without having touched Saru or Culber, starts having the same sort of like issues. All their fear responses are now elevated. They're all having the same kind of issue, except for Detmer, which is interesting. So Burnham starts scanning. There's no psionic energies, no infrasound. Saru confirms that there's no magnetic or electrical things. Culber says that their suits can definitely filter any sort of like chemical reactions that are going on.
And they all have the same settings.
Yeah, they all are at the highest difficult or the highest protection settings.
Yeah. And so, and Detmer confirmed that, like, no, my settings are the default, like everyone else.
Mm-hmm. So they take 5 minutes is what Burnham says. Like, don't panic. Let's take 5 minutes. Let's see if we can figure this out. Here's a problem. Let's try and figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
So, and if they can't, they'll go back to the shuttle and Detmer will carry on without them. Okay.
Seems reasonable.
Solid plan. Yeah. I mean, take a few minutes before you abandon the mission.
Right.
Cool. Back on the ship. Tarka is outside of engineering. We see a cool scene with Reno ordering Ractigino, hot as hell, no nutmeg. I love Reno. I really do. I want to see her in more episodes. But now I finally know why they've been in so few this season. It's because the actress, Tig Notaro, has taken COVID extremely seriously.
Yeah,
much respect for that.
Mm-hmm.
So she had requested to be in as little as used as possible. But as far as we know, she did not request to get killed off, because if they kill Reno, we riot. So,
yeah. And that's a shame. And I get the whole taking COVID very seriously, but then we didn't get much of a character that I think is one of the fan favorites. I know we always like seeing her around, but I mean,
some things are more important than the show, right?
It is what it is. Yeah.
This is definitely one of those things that's just more important than the show. Staying safe during a global pandemic that happens once in a lifetime. Mm-hmm. Fuck it. All right, we'll see less of Reno for the season. I really like her, but cool. It's a cool scene that builds up her bona fides as the chief engineer. Yes. Right. She's not necessarily involved in every troubleshooting scene, but she is definitely the one that makes sure stuff keeps working. It's not Stamets, it's her. Yeah, I'm down. So what starts to happen that gets their attention is Linus shows up and reports that there are steamed bananas coming out of the replicators, which is very clearly a Lower Decks reference.
Ooh, steamed bananas.
You remember in the first episode, right when they're welcoming Tendi, like they're fixing a replicator and like Boimler is catching steaming hot bananas flying out of it and burning himself while doing it.
Yeah.
Love the fact that they did a Lower Decks reference. Big fan.
I will never go around a warm or steamed banana again because I had one very bad experience with it. Let me tell you this story. So was at a previous employer of mine. A couple times a year, we would have this big sales blitz. There was a lot of like fanfare, some different events, different contests each morning, things like that. So one of them was some of us got called up, and the contest was, I think it was, who could eat a banana through we put pantyhose on the head. I don't know who had this idea. So put on pantyhose, right? And of course you can't, it's hard to eat something through that, right?
Naturally.
So they came up with the idea of bananas. And then the thought was, okay, well, to get the bananas to where you could push it through to be able to eat, had to be warmed up. Not sure how they warmed it up.
Microwave.
So anyway, right. Yeah.
Let's be real.
Took this banana and just shoved it right in. And oh my God, and everyone up there, because nobody knew what was going to happen doing that. And it
made a mess.
It was just, it took everything I could not for that stuff to just come back out the other way with a pair of freaking stockings covering me up. It could have been a disaster.
What a gross idea. Whoever thought that up was definitely not good.
No, that was terrible.
All right. So the other thing that happens in this scene is pretty cool. Adira shows up and expresses to Reno that they want to be better friends with Detmer. Mm-hmm. And so with Reno jokes that it's like a one graze away, Adira will play kind of thing. And Adira's very like immediate response was, no, not like that. I just want a friend. And that's cool. It's more of Adira being kind of socially awkward. They're definitely coded as neurodivergent. Cool. It was a good scene to show how they react to a social situation that they are not comfortable with. Yeah. But otherwise, whatever. Cool. Did you have anything else about this scene?
You know what I kind of thought was funny? I rewound a little bit was when Reno flicked her right in the side of the head. Adira. I don't know. I like slapstick, and that was them. Yeah, the side of the head. So I don't know. Juvenile humor. I thought it was funny.
Yeah, no, I'm down for slapstick. Star Trek has had it forever, so it works for me. Okay.
Yeah.
Next scene is back on the planet. They're still figuring out the hallucinations. They start talking about when it all started. Culber's began when he touched Saru's arm. Burnham then makes the connection of like, what if it's the blue dust that I'm standing in right now? Mm-hmm. Oh, Culber kneeled in it. Oh, wait, when we were back out there is when Saru stepped in it. Okay, so what is it about the blue dust, right?
Right. Yeah. And so they were able to reprogram the programmable matter in the filtering system so that they could keep that out. So whatever this crazy blue dust was what was causing that reaction, the fear reaction.
Yeah, which, I mean, it's weird that these hydrocarbon molecules would get through the filter even like anyways, but I can swallow it. That's not that big a deal. Right. Unlike your banana. But yeah, it's fine. The other cool bit that happens here is Saru is still calming down. It's taking him longer than the rest of them to relax a bit. And Detmer is trying to like talk to him. He compliments Detmer's coolness, and Detmer chalks it up to the PTSD therapy. And after her first trauma from like with the Shenzhou, then her other trauma after the crash landing. So she's been through a bit.
Oh yeah, right. She's been through some shit. So
yeah, and then she talks about her childhood of being the queen of putting things into boxes, which is a normal part of coping for many people. But you should still every now and then make sure that you let things out so that the stress on them can be relieved. You don't have to keep everything in boxes forever. Definitely, if you guys disagree with me on this one, let me know in the comments. But even things that like I still am ashamed about or like pissed about, every so often I let it out, talk about it, make sure that I still understand it, still care. And if I still care, back into the box it goes. If I no longer give a shit, it can go away.
Yeah, that's a good way to handle it, because if you don't take it out of the box, it gets worse. It really does. You like to think that it doesn't, but something keeps kind of gnawing at you, aggravating you. And before you know it, you're in a bad mood around everyone, little snappy, kicking your cat, getting hangry all the time, things like that.
Cool. So back to Discovery in engineering again. Here's where the actual scene where Linus shows up, reports the replicators are malfunctioning, steamed bananas, etc. We just talked about this. But yeah, Reno dispatches engineers from main engineering to go do this thing, because there's no need to have people in main engineering when the ship's not moving. We're just sitting here. And if it's needed, we can beam back, right? Yeah. Cool. All makes sense. Tarka then seizes this opportunity with everybody gone, and Reno left with Linus to like sneak out and start messing with a panel. Cool. On the other side of the ship, Booker is meeting with Ndoye, even though Ndoye thought it was Tarina. She grabs him as soon as she realizes who it is and has a knife up against his throat. Yeah. Love that. Immediate reaction is the right thing to do. Badass reaction. Yeah,
it was. With programmable matter, you don't know what someone's going to come up with. You shouldn't be sneaking up on people.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things that I think would be a really cool thing to have with programmable matter would be like, you've got a bracelet, you've got a ring or something, and it is just enough matter to turn into like a short little dagger, like what Ndoye was using at a moment's notice, right? It reacts to your emotions. You feel threatened. It manifests as like a quick little weapon in the event of something like that.
Jesus. Yeah.
Yeah. The programmable matter is like the coolest new technology that they have in this 31st century, and they use it for everything. So
yeah.
Cool. Ndoye demands for one good reason why not to call security. And Booker replies with this whole, you needed our help. You need our help to save your world. Don't you want to save your world kind of thing? And just ask for like 2 minutes. Mm-hmm. Ndoye should have reported on security, but Ndoye is panicked as a result of the threat to Earth. So off it goes. So Ndoye vents at Booker about like, this is your fault, kid. Like, this is your fault for making the DMA more powerful. You and Tarka are the real problem here too. Booker reminds her that like, we were trying to save Earth. If our plan had worked, if you guys had backed it, maybe it would have. Not likely, but tries to get out of it with that. He also says the whole like Booker says the whole like, I lost my home, I just want you to not lose yours. Fair argument, but like intentions don't matter when the results are this bad, right? What's the saying? The road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yes.
So,
and here's the other thing is I thought Ndoye threw Booker a lot of shade for someone that basically supported the way that he wanted to take care of the situation. It seemed like, hey, wait a minute. He's doing what you wanted to do. Now he's trying to get your help and you've got a problem with it. I
appreciate though that Ndoye is not just willing to sign up with his shit because she's still here on Discovery. She may have voted against it, but she believes that first contact can work. That's why she's there. So
right.
I don't know. She was big enough to make sure that she went on this mission to try and help however she could, even though she didn't think that it was the best plan. And now that she's here, she's going to work to try and make it succeed. Yeah. Except for, the whole protecting a known criminal who is responsible for some of these problems.
It happens.
Does it though? All right. So they go through this back and forth and they come to an agreement. Ndoye ensures that the first contact is the primary plan. Yours can be the backup. Like that's the bright line that she defines. Booker's okay with it. Booker agrees. I don't think Tarka is going to agree.
No, he's not.
So this is just going to fall apart, just like the last time that Booker and Tarka agreed to like wait. Tarka's just going to fucking do it again. Ndoye is being naive by thinking that this is something that's going to work. Unless she puts a knife up to Tarka, I don't think that it's going to matter that Booker agreed to this deal for a second.
No, and but how much of what Tarka has done is Ndoye privy to? I don't think it's much, because a lot of the stuff that they did, she was not around for. But that's anyway, true.
But she is one of the high-ranking members on this committee. I expect that she would have been briefed on how exactly it went down on Booker's ship. Remember, Booker calls him and goes, "Tarka just did the thing. It's going to go off. Get out of here, Michael," or whatever. So they should understand that Tarka is the one that did this. In fact, there was a conversation between Burnham and Rillick about this too, right? So they should have at least a general idea that it's not Booker and Tarka that broke the last treaty. It's Tarka.
Yes.
So yeah, difficult times.
And now we're back on the planet again. There's a lot of jumping around.
Yeah, no, this episode has definitely a very clear A plot and a B plot. Works for me. No complaints on, that as an idea. I like that generally. Right. So it's interesting that they chose to do it this way. It works for the episode for sure.
Yes. Yeah, it did.
Okay. On this planet scene, they start to figure out what this room is. They start theorizing that maybe it was a No. They don't come to the nursery first. They go through like a list of things that it looks like. It could have been an auditorium, it could have been a theater, it could have been like a coliseum. And they're all like, nope. Then they finally found another set of bones. And Culber's like, this one was an infant. And then Burnham puts two and two together, and it's a nursery. That's why they reinforced it. They value their young. They try to protect their young. All of the older ones that were dead outside came here to try and make sure that trying to think that maybe they could protect the nursery, or maybe the nursery was the safest place, and they all still died, right?
Yeah. Well, and that's what they came to the conclusion of, is that they had the infants, it was a nursery, and that with the structure so reinforced that they actually did value life to a pretty high degree, especially with their young.
Which is progress, right? Yeah. Like that shows you that you can bridge it with some emotions that are common, right? Mm-hmm. So they find another sample of the blue dust. This one has a slightly different hydrocarbon signature to it, and they disable their filters and feel it. And this one is love, just true love. And they all have this cool scene about how like it's an easy breath for Saru. It reminds them all of their families. It's a cool thing. And here's where they come up with this theory that maybe these hydrocarbons are communications markers that convey an emotion or a feeling. And so they reset their EV filters, and we cut again back to the ship. So Tarka here finishes installing his patch. Reno shows up. He hides under a desk. Reno walks up to him, finds him anyways, and goes, "Oh, I spoiled a surprise party." It was a cool scene. It was good.
It was. I play that game with the kids. They're hiding. Just walk up and, oh, there you are. And she thought that somebody was pulling a prank, some kind of thing. And she came back a lot sooner, I believe, than Tarka had hoped. But she caught on pretty quickly that somebody was screwing around. And she voiced her displeasure at someone doing that in a situation.
I just want to know what happened after this scene.
Yes. Yeah, because, and well, we'll get to it.
We'll get to
you're
it,
right.
But yeah. All right. So we go back to the hydrocarbons investigation. They confirm their findings that they each convey different emotions. Some species, and they mentioned the plim of ASP27 that communicate only via chemicals. So yeah, this all tracks. There are plenty of pheromones that are used in the animal kingdoms here on Earth, where they primarily communicate that way. Bees, for example. Yes. So all this works. It also makes sense that, the hydrocarbons that were primarily found outside, just as everything was dying, are those of fear and terror, whereas the ones inside and protected, even though they died anyways, were those of more maternal love or protection. So cool. Here's where we get the name of the episode dropped. Rosetta Stone comes up. Yeah. Cool details there. This essentially concludes their investigation. They feel like they've got everything they need to start they're connecting with 10C whenever they encounter them. And it's a good scene. They start to collect some samples and then they head back to the shuttle to go back to Discovery.
It's a good science scene. That's what
I do have a concern though.
Sure. Yeah. What's that?
So depending on how they collect samples, they might be grave robbing, right? Like they are taking things from bodies or produced by dead infants on their homeworld.
Jesus. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So unless
some implications here,
there are definitely some concerns. Now there's a way around it. Now, let's say instead of taking a sample means taking what's there. No, instead taking a sample works by replicating a copy of whatever you're scanning. That works for me. That's well within Star Trek's technology, right? Like it just makes a perfect one-to-one sample of whatever you were just selecting.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think they do that anymore, where they have to literally scoop some of whatever into a,
I would hope not,
jar.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Because you're right. That could be, they could figure out how to communicate with 10C and say, well, it was by means of getting some of these blue hydrocarbons on your planet. Oh, so you robbed a grave with our young ones, and that's sacrilege. Now you die.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Definitely a concern there. But I'm with you. Definitely the whole concept of these hydrocarbon chains being the key to communication.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we've seen that before, and I like it. It's good. I like novel.
Yep.
Okay, so the shuttle lifts off. They go back to Discovery. They start talking a little bit while on the flight back up, and Detmer apologizes for their emotional issues compromising the mission. Burnham cuts her off mid-word and goes, "If you finish that sentence, I'm going to demote you," which is the perfect response to somebody apologizing for nothing. And it definitely shows that Burnham cares about her crew. Detmer gets why she's saying that. It's a good little feel-good scene. It was good.
Yeah, it was. And I like how Burnham handles the crew and their officers. She makes them actually feel like they're cared about and not just a number. And really, I'm trying to think what other captain in Star Trek really gave you that feeling. I think Janeway, sure.
Cisco did it with Dax for sure.
Well, one person, yeah, definitely with Max.
Picard was pretty distant.
Picard was real distant.
Kirk did it sometimes to like Yeoman Rand or other characters, but it was. I really like Burnham's captaining style on this.
And Archer, you just don't know. I couldn't get a beat on him.
Archer definitely cared about Hoshi, right? Like, remember in the early seasons when Hoshi was still getting her space legs and was like all freaky out about everything?
God, Hoshi got on my damn nerves.
I loved Hoshi, but
Okay.
she was great. But in those first few episodes when she was still like freaking out about everything, it was cool. But yeah, so I like Burnham's captaining style. It makes sense, especially when they have gone through so much together. But we come to this one last discussion then about how if 10C lost so much because of a bunch of asteroid impacts against their planet where so many died because it's impossible to evacuate a whole population, why would they allow the DMA to do the same thing? Because it's essentially going to destroy planets in basically the same way. Remember what happened to Quajon? It broke apart the moon and chunks of the moon fell onto the planet and destroyed the planet. Yeah. They're basically perpetuating a cycle. So how can they let that happen? Culber, the optimist, presents the notion that if they can convince 10C that the harm that they're doing is affecting real lives and real people, they will stop. Saru, ever the pessimist, goes, they probably already know and they just don't care. So we're going to see which one is right next episode because it's called Species 10C. So I expect we'll finally get to know them.
I hope so. I mean, okay, I love everything up to this point, the mystery, the science behind it, et cetera, et cetera. But we brought this up maybe a week or two ago when we were talking about the third season, where they wait until the last episode to come to the conclusion of what the whole mystery was with the burn. And what we were hoping for this season is give us 10C an episode before the last one. Let's have some more.
Which is what we're getting.
Right. Which is great. And you raise a good point, was that it seems like they obviously, to me, they know what they're doing. I really think that they know it's costing lives, but it has to be something that is we're not getting or not catching. There has to be some more grand scheme, or not scheme, but it just seems like to me
we're just missing information.
Whatever is going on or why they're doing it is above just basic mining. I mean, they're not out there sifting through sand to find gold. What they're doing could be very, very important. There could be something that, of course, they don't know about, that everyone else doesn't know about. They could be building up something to stop a higher power technology or people.
We talked about this last episode, remember?
Yeah.
Like maybe they're the ones putting up the galactic barrier. Maybe they are the ones that keep it there. Maybe there's something worse outside of the galaxy and they're protecting us.
Right.
We don't know.
Right.
But yeah, I'm hoping that we get a good explanation next episode, something a bit more satisfying than like he connected to a dilithium planet, and as a result, he screamed because of emotional trauma, and that made dilithium everywhere in the galaxy go, bleh. Yeah, that was a very unsatisfying one for me.
Yeah, I hope it don't make it that. Yeah, please don't make it something like that.
So the next scene I thought was really cool. In Burnham's ready room, Stamets is reporting that they'd sent down the .23s and they had collected, I want to say 16 different unique compounds.
16.
Yeah. Now they're going to have to do some studies on that and some testing on it, which makes sense, right? Because you can't scan a hydrocarbon and know what the emotion is. Someone's going to need to be exposed to it. And that means an uncomfortable bit of exposure probably for some of them.
Yeah.
Dr. Harai is again on the scene and he's like, well, this is a good start, but the Rosetta Stone required 2 languages to understand the third, right? So this is a starting place. Rillick gives him another glance and he goes, but good job, guys, right? Like he did well in getting her message there. They set a course for the hyperfield and they go to warp immediately. Tarina sticks around and offers to take a stroll with Saru on the holodeck. And that's cute. It seems that their relationship is developing a little bit. No longer do we have Saru like awkwardly being like, oh, I couldn't possibly, that would be so unchaste of us to be doing something together. How awful. Right.
But so still make your move, dude.
Right.
We only
Clearly
have 2
she wants
episodes left in this. Yeah, I know. Right.
Anyways, so at this point, the whole episode has taken about 4 hours of time. It was 29 hours when they started, and this scene it's 25 hours. So they need to start testing. Stamets is very positive on this. I think that this data has changed everything. He feels hope for the first time. Stamets being usually a Debbie Downer for these things, being optimistic, it's a good sign. Yeah.
I wonder how the testing is going to go. Touch this one. Okay. What are you feeling? Fear. All right. That's the fear one. Touch this one. What do you feel? Love. Okay. We'll label that one. So yeah, who's the guy that gets to touch these and then say how they feel?
Who knows?
There's 16 of these things, and I'm sure several of them probably are not good.
Well, here's the other one, right? Like, are different species going to have different reactions to some of them? So Kelpians and humans reacted the same to it. They've got a Vulcan on the ship. Have the Vulcan see if they react differently to these emotions, or have a Vulcan do all the testing because they can suppress the emotions, right? Like it may be easier for them to just be like, this is hate, but hate in the sense of like, I didn't like that food. It's not just hate. Okay. What's the next one? It's a love emotion, but it's not love towards a parent. It's like romantic love. Okay, cool. And they can just go detailing them down.
They just happen to have a Vulcan on the ship.
Could be cool. But yeah, so at this point, we go back to Booker beaming back, talking to Ndoye. At this point, they're still hiding behind the wall. Booker's hiding behind the wall, watching this little conference go on, and he thanks Ndoye for telling him that Burnham had returned. So before he leaves the ship, he just wanted to see Burnham one last time. Clearly, he still loves her. I don't think that that's a good enough reason for Booker to get away with this. Burnham should not just forgive him.
No.
And I don't think she's going to.
No, not with... Well, but
she gave the whole "you crossed the line" thing. Remember?
True. But in his defense, because of Tarka, the situation like just kind of went off the rails.
Sure.
And he actually, it felt like to me he was trying to pull back on. Tarka was going pretty hard in the paint, and Booker's trying to reel him back in. So yeah, he started the mess and then got out of his control and.
Yep.
But I don't see Michael necessarily
taking him back.
That's tough. You know,
I hope she doesn't.
There's some trust there that's been lost, and
a lot.
Yeah.
All right. So next, so one thing I wanted to point out though about this whole discussion is if the species tendency primarily communicates through emotional pheromones or emotional hydrocarbon complex chains, right? Cool. You know what this ship really could have used? A betazoid. Right.
Oh, that would have been nice.
Betazoids have trouble with weird ass brains. That's why they can't read the Ferengi, the Ductarians, or whatever 4-lobed brains they can't do. But half betazoids sometimes get a glimpse on those things. Remember how Deanna would sometimes get a glimpse even when her mother couldn't.
Right.
So they should have brought some. Bring a betazoid, bring a half betazoid, bring some other like psionic races. Maybe that would have worked.
But did they know that when they were departing?
No, not at all. But they didn't know what they were going to meet, so it might have made sense to bring one anyways.
Bring one of everything. We want to bring a Bajoran, a Vulcan. What else?
Bring as diverse a group as you can, so you get as most opinions on something as you can.
Good idea.
Yeah, we don't know if there are any betazoids on the ship. I doubt it. The 22nd century, I think was before they joined the Federation, so they would not have been in the original Discovery crew, but we don't know.
Oh, well, no, but I mean, they would have been on the base or in Starfleet. It's not necessarily
assuming they're not extinct.
Oh shit. Yeah.
We don't know. Yeah, we don't know. But having some species that's pretty telepathic would probably have been a good idea. But yeah, maybe they can read the minds. Maybe they can't, but at least you should have brought one just to find out.
Yeah. Good point.
Yeah. So next scene is in the lounge, and we've got Detmer and Adira meeting up, and it is a kind of fun scene, a little awkward. Adira starts by congratulating Detmer on their work and that the finding is a game changer. It's kind of like a stilted discussion. Like, it's very clear that Adira is having trouble opening up. And Detmer picks up on it and starts to encourage them, but it's still it's a little awkward of a scene. What can I say?
Yeah,
they do lampshade it pretty well, because at the end of the scene, Adira asks that Detmer specifically forget that I ever told you fly good. And Detmer just goes, no, I'm going to remind you of that every day of your life. Right. That's what friends do. Oh, no, that's what friends do. It's a good starting point for a good friendship. I liked it.
Yeah. Having blackmail on someone.
I wouldn't call it blackmail. It's just something to tease somebody about.
Yeah. I get it. Yeah, I totally get it. That's why I could never run for president.
Yeah.
It's too much shit out there. I mean, I'm not even going to do it.
All right. So then our next scene is Burnham and Culber having like a cup of Mavi just to like talk and like just catch up with a bit. And it's a cool scene. I've had Mavi. I'm not the biggest fan. It tastes like root beer that's gone flat with like a bit of spice to it.
What is it?
It's weird. It's like a soda or a tea, depending on how it's prepared. That's really common in Puerto Rico. I'm not Puerto Rican, but I'm from Miami, so I have plenty of Puerto Ricans around me, and I've definitely had a couple different versions of Mavi. It's okay. It's not bad. It's a cool thing to bring up for a character whose actor is Puerto Rican, and we presume that the character is familiar with it too. Okay. So it's a good cultural touchstone, which is exactly what this whole episode is about: finding cultural touchstones. It's just a cool bit.
Okay.
And they also touch a little bit about how they were both worried about finding a ground to communicate. What if Saru is right? What if they know but don't care? How do you connect to people who don't care like this?
That's going to put a damper on everything, the whole plan.
Burnham remains confident. Burnham is positive on it. They can find a way. I think that this whole like approach of the children, think of the children, might really work. Yeah. And I don't think that's going to surprise anybody if that's what they approach it as.
I think I can almost guarantee you, yes, it's going to be the think of the children kind of thing. Well, but they would know that, of course, the damage they're causing on these planets, that there would be children. How do they? I don't know. How would they be completely oblivious to what they're doing? That's the thing that I
here's the how. If you want a crazy little explanation.
Yep.
So they're outside of the galaxy. So they are hundreds of thousands of light years away, right? We know that the galactic barrier interferes with subspace and with the spore drive. Maybe they can't use subspace scanners to see inside of the galaxy. And so they can only rely on light speed observations of things. And as a result, they're seeing images from literally millions of years ago or hundreds of thousands of years ago before there was life or developed life on these planets.
Well, but if they're able, they have the technology to be able to scan and see this very hard to find, almost infinitesimal material or product.
Do they? The DMA seems to jump around randomly, blows up everything, and collects only the boronite and then leaves again.
Well, it's jumping to where it finds boronite.
No, it's going anywhere because boronite is evenly distributed across the galaxy. They said, right? It's incredibly small percentages, but it's everywhere. It's just incredibly small amounts of it. So it just goes everywhere.
Right. Yeah. Because if this is, the galaxy and it's pretty much spread throughout, yeah, you could just kind of randomly go around.
And you'll get roughly the same amount everywhere you go.
Yeah. That's a good theory, is that they know what they're looking for there, but because of the barrier, if it was something they created, that
this conflicts, right? If they created the barrier, then they should know that there's life and things there. If they didn't create the barrier and it's something else that's there, then maybe they can't see through it properly. Who knows?
To me, the thing is kind of like, it's almost like a fishing pole. The water is your galactic barrier, and you can't see it, but you know that there's some indicator on your fishing line that you got something. To me, that's kind of like what the DMA is that the person controlling it is the fisherman, cast their thing out to try to catch something. You can't see in the water, which is the Great Barrier, but when you've caught something. And once you start not catching anything, you go around to a different part of the lake. So to me, that's kind of the way I look at it, is that they know what they're looking for. They know how to find it. They know they might have to move around to get it, but they can't see through the barrier.
Think of it this way. Here's the analogy I would use, right? Mm-hmm. You know what a metal detector is?
Yep.
Imagine looking on the beach in the middle of the night without a flashlight, but with a metal detector. You can't see it. You're scanning, you find the beeps, and you've got your shovel. You can dig, but you can't see until you find it.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Good point.
So yeah, I think that works pretty well.
Okay.
And so we come to our very last scene with Booker's ship attached and cloaked, like alongside Discovery, or like attached to Discovery, quite literally. And Booker returns, and then he looks around the corner, and Jet Reno is like inside of his ship as an unexpected hostage. And Booker looks both surprised and kind of pissed.
Yeah. And you brought this up earlier. How did she go from getting the drop on Tarka, who's hiding under a table, and now she's a hostage? What the hell?
I have no idea. The only thing I can think of is presumably Tarka and Booker beamed over armed. Okay.
Sure.
And yet Reno was not armed. That's about the only thing I got.
Well, but everyone seems to be able to come up with weapons and stuff pretty quickly.
How did she not get out like a comm or something, right? Just say something and you'll have a team of security there immediately. They'll just beam over. I don't know.
Yeah, she had enough time for a witty quip.
Remark. Yeah,
she didn't have enough time to yell help or or something. And you know what my first thought was when it obviously placed her in a position where she'd be in the next episode was, wow, that's real ballsy, because as unoften that Tig Notaro is in Discovery episodes, you're pulling off something there when you make your
if they kill Reno, we riot.
Oh yeah. They kill Reno, we're done. It's going to be a riot in the streets.
Yep. All right. So that's basically the end of the episode. What we don't see is Booker's explanation to Tarka of his deal with Ndoye, which I suspect will be how the episode starts this coming week. It's probably going to be a whole how could you agree to that kind of thing? We need to get the power core. That was a stupid deal. We can't fault that kind of thing from Tarka, which fits.
Yeah, it does. All right. So next week, this stuff's getting good.
Yeah, no, I think
episodes.
I think that we've got a good baseline for what to expect. I just hope that whatever they decide to do with this is interesting. But yeah, it was a good episode overall. I really liked the science to it.
Yeah. The science was great. So we've got 2 more episodes in this season of Discovery, alongside with the first few episodes of Picard. It's a little bit of overlap here. And next episode of Discovery is named 10C. And apparently we're supposed to, I guess, make that contact. I think Species 10C will be the name of the next episode. They need to just go ahead and do it. We need to see them and start working on whatever it is going here. So yeah, great episode in my opinion.
Yeah, I was a big fan. I thought that they did a really good job presenting this as like a real mystery, which, trying to understand how to communicate is always a mystery. This goes back to the conversation from the previous episode with Harai and Kovic about like confirmation bias.
Yeah.
Because if everyone is inside of our galaxy, descendant of the precursors or the preservers or whatever, and everybody has some common characteristics, then yeah, communication is going to be pretty easy. These guys clearly not from this cut from the same cloth. So
right. Exactly.
I like this. It's good. We'll see how it goes. I'm looking forward to it.
Yep. Well, listeners and viewers, hope you enjoyed this episode of Beyond Trek Podcast. Stay tuned. We're going to be doing more episode reviews, and hey, that's about it. So live long and prosper.
Hey everybody, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to our Patreon and Anchor supporters. Big thanks to Stephanie Baker, S. Tam, Anne Marie, Jim Cook, and Nora Hickson. We really appreciate your support. Thanks for being a part of Beyond Trek Podcast.
We are Beyond Trek Podcast. Lower your inhibitions and surrender your years. We will add inspirational and hilarious Trek content to your day. Your attention will adapt to subscribe to us. Resistance is futile.